Thank you, Carol. Okay, folks, I'm not going to speak for very long at all. I just want to welcome you all here. This is not my presentation, although I'm currently the chair of the BALEAP Accreditation Scheme, have been for a little while. We have a few of our inspectors here. Melinda's here, and Michael's here, and Maggie's here. It's lovely to see you all. What today's really about is going to be three stories or three experiences of BALEAP accreditation. I'll introduce you to people in a moment. And they're just going to talk about their experience of going through a BAS, a BALEAP Accreditation Scheme accreditation. I have to, in the interest of transparency here, I have to say that I worked with Helen McAllister at UAL. She was in fact my line manager at the time, and I was there for a number of years. Helen works still at UAL, and she is the Associate Dean of the International Student Experience at the University of the Arts, and she's also responsible for the Language Centre. So that's how I know her, really, from the Language Centre. Helen Hickey, actually, I've known her in two different sort of settings. I worked with her at UAL as well, University of Arts London, and then she came and joined us at Goldsmiths. Shh, don't tell Helen McAllister, that is. But she's with us now and is an EAP lecturer at Goldsmiths University. And then Laurence Kinsella is the head of discipline, EAP at Nazarbayev University. I always stumble over it a bit. But I've known Laurence for a number of years as well when we first met in South Africa. And he's one of our institutions outside of the UK that went for BALEAP accreditation. And so I'm quite curious to hear his story as well. And in fact, Lawrence's university was the only one we accredited last year because of the pandemic. And this year we're going ahead and we are accrediting, but we're doing it all online. So, more of what we're doing right now. But without further ado, I'm going to hand over to Helen McAllister first, and then Helen Hickey, and then Laurence will follow up. And then there'll be time at the end to ask questions. Feel free to save them for then, or to put them into the chat so we can just have a record of the questions as well. So Helen, I'm going to hand over to you at this point, if I may.
Thank you, thank you. I'm going to try and share my screen. What could possibly go wrong? Okay, can people, on the right slide?
We can see, yep.
Oh, will it not let me go backwards when I'm sharing?
Should. Your backward row?
Previous. Okay, yeah. I've got to do it that way.
Sorry,
that was really silly to start on the wrong slide. Okay. Here we go. So Conrad's asked me to talk a little bit about the sort of history of UAL's engagement with the University of the Arts London engagement with the BALEAP accreditation scheme. So that's going to be my focus, really. So just to start off with, UAL, University of the Arts London, is in the top 2. So you can guess which one we are in the QS World Rankings for art and design. So we're a really big art, design and communication specialist higher education provider. About half of our students, our 20,000 students, come from overseas. So actually this slide is slightly wrong, I have to say. It's not half of them are speakers of English as an additional language, but 90% of that 50% are speakers of English as an additional language, many from China, but lots of other countries as well. So obviously English language provision and language provision per se is really important at UAL, and the quality is really important as well. So back in 2012, when we had Conrad as our head of pre-sessional, we were accredited by the British Council scheme, so Accreditation UK, We had pre-sessional, we had in-sessional, which we call language development at UAL, and we had quite a big short course provision for students just coming in, doing a short English language course and then going away again. Many of those students did not continue into the university at all, but about 10% of them did. Yeah, those short courses were English and also English plus courses, so more sort of traditional language school courses. And what we did feel when the British Council came in to inspect us each time was that the British Council accreditation was a better fit for the short courses than really for the pre-sessional and language development in-sessional programs, which didn't get much of an in-depth look in terms of EAP really. So yeah, we were always sort of conscious of that. And around that time, so back in 2012, we were also getting feedback or challenges really from receiving departments about the students who attended pre-sessional and the in-sessional students as well, queries about their level, and then of course inevitably questions about the appropriacy of what we were doing on the pre-sessional programme. And I think alongside that, there was also a bit of a morale issue with both the pre-sessional tutors and the language development tutors, who were often the same group, in fact, working across programmes. I think in response to the feedback we were maybe getting from some of the courses about the students coming through and the problems that they faced, but also
four of us are pretty jolly souls. The glass.
I think someone's got their audio on. Oh, stop now, so that's good. So yeah, I wanted to sort of address those issues, quite major issues really, about, you know, feedback on the students coming from our courses, but also the morale of the team, and then just getting that more in-depth look at the EAP side of our provision. Okay, so I'm going to try and go to the next slide now. Here we are. So yeah, this was really the sort of catalyst for change when I thought it would be good to have the BALEAP Accreditation Scheme, as well as the British Council one, which we still needed because we used their marketing channels to market our short course provision in particular. So I wanted a developmental framework really for the pre-sessional and the language development in-sessional provision. And I wanted to be part of the community that BALEAP offers and get involved in the discussions that go on about different aspects of our work. I wanted the sector benchmarking, so to have some peers coming in, looking at what we were doing, telling us where we could think about improving our provision. Staff developments, just that community for the staff to engage with, but also the internal recognition. I mean, we really saw that when the British Council came in and were very positive about our provision, the university was very receptive to that. They really trusted the British Council assessment of our provision, but also it was an opportunity for us to use communication channels internally at the university to talk about what we do, inform people about the sort of rigour, I guess, of our provision and the detail of it. And I think that directly impacts on staff morale as well, for getting that recognition. And I really felt that it would be helpful for us to have the BALEAP kind of stamp of approval, seal of approval, if you like, as specialist providers of EAP. So I think I'm going on to the next slide now. So last year, 2020, there was a pandemic and things changed, definitely in relation to the short course provision. So obviously huge challenges there, because that programme was about people travelling internationally to do English language courses. and we didn't have an online offer set up at the time. But at the same time, there had been some discussions going on about whether we ought to be moving to more pipeline provision there, so more EAP courses, more flexible than the pre-sessional, but directly feeding into University of the Arts London recruitment. So those things came together, and it was decided by the enterprise area of the university that we would move into pipeline provision once we'd kind of worked through the pandemic, which of course we're still doing. So I think someone's got their audio on again. So we didn't need those marketing channels that we hadn't used previously. The university wanted to use our overseas representatives and partners to communicate with students about this new pipeline offer. Something else I was aware of in relation to the British Council accreditation, because I was on the ASAC, the Accreditation Scheme Advisory Committee for the British Council, was that lots of universities, lots of HEIs, higher education institutions, face challenges with the British Council accreditation scheme, because it is a very broad scheme, and it's great in that it looks at the whole student experience and offers a lot of information to potential users. But in universities, often the language centres don't have control of some of the
Sultan, and we were accredited last year. So first of all, I'll give you a little bit of a background to this. The accreditation visit actually took place, I think it was the 9th, the 12th of February. So actually, just after the pandemic had started, that we didn't really know. The people who came, it was Maxine Gilway, Julie King, and it was to be Melinda Wong, but that couldn't happen because the first bans came in Kazakhstan, and some people from some places weren't allowed to travel in. And this is a real echo and strange for me now, because I think I said to Melinda at the time, okay, don't worry, we'll get you back. I think it was for the external on the exam board next year. Well, obviously I won't, because it's still not possible, but perhaps next year. Okay, I'll give a bit of background to our course. We're a new university, and it's an in-sessional year-long foundation course. The university is 10 years old, but to begin with, we didn't have our own foundation course. I worked, and everyone else did, for UCL. We were on secondment to Nazarbayev University, and we did the UCL International Foundation course. That contract finished in 2015, and after a rocky period with a possible new partner, it was decided from 2016 we'd create our own course. And actually, in a way, I mean, it was a bit painful at the time, but in a way, it fitted, because previously the course had been pathways and the university entrance ran on pathways. But now we were changing. The university has a 4-year undergraduate course, and now the first year has become Common Core. So there was no point really in doing pathways, because the students don't have to decide until the end of year 1 of their 4-year degree. So now we became an English for general academic purposes course, and from scratch we worked on constructively aligning the course, which obviously didn't happen overnight, or I think it was probably about in the 3rd year when we got it to be how we wanted it to be. And at that stage I wanted some external validation of our course. I had to fight a little bit of a battle to make sure it came from BALEAP and not from the States, because our university is mainly North American influenced. But I felt for our EAP course, it was the most appropriate. accreditation. Okay, I think I've done everything I want to do on that slide. So the benefits of the accreditation process. I think this echoes what has already been said to some extent. We wanted an audit of the programme. So we created this from scratch. We wanted someone to come in, look at it, and give us feedback on it. Obviously, before that happens, in preparation for the accreditation, we'd been through a process that probably lasted about 1 year, I suppose, where we become institutional members of BALEAP, and we prepared for accreditation. The BAS handbook is very, very useful for this. And I created on Google Drive electronic folders, which were the 5 sections which are looked at in the accreditation. And within those, you can save all of the evidence. So within those folders, I had each criteria numbered with subfolders and the evidence for that in there. And we found that very, very useful for organising ourselves, I suppose. Another benefit is, I'll come back to this later, it identifies areas for development. So our feedback was pretty good. We fully met, I think it was 39 of the criteria, and we partially met 7. So it was pretty good, but you still get very, very useful feedback on other areas. And I'll come back to that on the next slide, I think it is. Another benefit was, as a new university and a very ambitious university, we needed to become accredited. We're funded by the government, but we're autonomous. And the aim is that we'll be in the top 200 world universities by 2030, which is very ambitious, but we're moving along quickly, especially in terms of research. But because the government does provide the funding, they want to see results, and accreditation is part of that. So undergoing this accreditation put the spotlight on new fit within the NU, which is very, very important, and I'll come back to that, and nationally, which everyone in the hierarchy really liked. We were in the newspapers and it was reported quite extensively because no one in Central Asia had done anything like this in the past. A further benefit, but linked, is external recognition of the quality. And we also wanted to establish links, if you like, with the outside, the wider EAP world. Okay. Since, I want to talk about what's happened since accreditation, because obviously if you become accredited in February 2020, what you've been doing, well, it didn't carry on in the same way. We've been fully online since March 2020. We still are, and even potentially, we're not sure yet, but potentially the first semester next year may still be online. So a lot of the things that were in place have changed, although not as much as perhaps we thought. So recognition within NU, this is one of the developments. The assessment team gave some feedback saying we should have closer links with the receiving schools, which of course is very, very useful. And they recommended that we made further efforts. Possibly the problem was we made efforts, but being the foundation EAP course, we didn't have very much weight in the university. But what's happened since has been very, very surprising. Because of the accreditation, we've now got CPS, our centre, representatives on every school in the university's learning and teaching quality committees, which they wouldn't let us do before. They resisted very, very strongly. And it's accreditation that's given us this weight with the previously resistant schools. Also, we've received massive backing from the director of the institutional effectiveness, who has pushed this, but he's told me that the accreditation has given him the weapon, if you like, to do this. So that's one major development. Okay, so this wasn't a recommendation, this was just some feedback. Our previous innovation had focused mainly on areas outside the core syllabus, I suppose. PDM's personal development, and O is our online writing environment. It's quite, what I put in bold is what's not so relevant at the moment, because nothing's happening in a physical classroom, and classroom practice has changed a lot. The technology that can be used is very, very important. I'm not so sure how much we can talk about face-to-face. So our course has changed massively. The online writing environment was always online. We started that in 2016. That was massively important in carrying on at distance. All of our feedback on the written parts of our course, the projects, research projects, is done online, and the feedback, the majority of it, comes online. So as that was already in place, that helped a lot. But we've gone on now to further innovation. Those innovations, I think the core ones this year are observation and what was going to be observed. So previously, like most people, we observed live classes. We've now changed to observing the feedback on the written work, and now that aligns with the rest of the course. And also we expanded our tutorials. We always had tutorials once a week for every student, but we expanded them from about 15 minutes to 30 minutes for each student a week. That's been crucial, I think, in keeping the students on board when these students this year have never been to the university. It's been very important in terms of motivation and in terms of addressing the problems caused by not being on campus. They're not the richest people, a lot of our students in the world, and if you have to study at home, there's going to be other family there. You're not often going to have your own room. You're often not going to have the right equipment, although the university has supplied the worst affected students with laptops and paid for internet. We also decided, because tutorials were so important, we could observe those as well. And these developments have possibly been forced upon us, but we're quite proud of them now. We've developed a framework for observing tutorials, and that made us, to begin with, think about what should be in a tutorial. We've always had them, but no one thought very much about them, I don't think, before. But now we've got sections about what should be done, and we observe and feedback and develop them further, the guidelines further as we go along. It's the same with the online feedback. We've always had rubrics, but now the online feedback links directly to the rubrics. So someone's writing their research project, the students know about the rubric, they've been through the rubrics, and they go back to it each week. The feedback will say, it'll refer to the rubric, it'll say section 1, criteria 4, descriptor 4 actually is descriptor. And then the feedback on that descriptor will come. Not all feedbacks like that, but probably 60 to 70% of the written feedback online links directly to the rubrics. And so we can go in and develop, because this was new for a lot of people, we can develop how that feedback's given. At the end of this, I'll share very briefly, if I've got time, some of the guidelines we've got for this. So technology has not only helped us in what we do, it's changed what we do. The course is also now asynchronous it's a sort of a flip model on Moodle. The students do that before their Zoom synchronous classes. We found that Zoom synchronous classes were not that effective and they didn't seem that useful or popular with the students or the teachers. So we still kept them, but they look more or less like a summarizing, going back to what's happened on Moodle. We awarded, we don't have attendance anymore, we have engagement. So in order to gain your engagement grade to the tutorials, we didn't count as internet connections, etc. And because they weren't the most important thing, we also cut them down to 3 hours a week. They were more than that in the first semester of this academic year. Okay, let me go on. The other major benefit, I think, for us has been the external links, which we wanted. We're quite isolated. There's no one else within, I don't know how far it is, but must be over 1,000 miles in Western style university. We've done this year already joint CPD with the English Language Teaching Centre at the University of Sheffield. And that was on tutorials and feedback. We discussed what we were doing and what they were doing, and we're planning to have another one in, I don't know, perhaps not too distant future. We're involved in the BALEAP SIG, different people and different ones. We've produced webinars. I've been involved in a webinar, sorry. I've been involved in a webinar for the TELSIG and other people for other SIGs. We have a BALEAP section in our weekly e-bulletin, which advertises everything that's, well, mainly SIGs, but anything else that's current. And that allows our teaching fellows to attend them. And some teaching fellows are now considering BALEAP fellowship. In fact, they will. Some will be starting to do it soon, I think. The issue was our university already paid for HEA Advanced fellowships. So as they were free, that's what everyone did. I don't know, people will do anything if you pay them to, perhaps. But that's what happened. But now we're sort of weaning them over to BALEAP, and I'm trying to get the funding changed over to that. Right. This is something we'd like to see. Conrad knows about this, I think, and so do one or two other people. The accreditation is great, and it recognises we've got a good course, but we'd like to see greater recognition and acceptance of accredited programmes by parent universities of other institutions, their admissions departments. So we'd like our students who've been successful in our course, if they didn't want to stay at NU, to be able to get recognition for what they've done at other universities abroad. There's quite a lot of funding in Kazakhstan for students to go abroad. So that would be very, very useful. Our course, I think, actually meets the requirements of most UK universities. Our students have to do, well, quite a few things before they get here. It's competitive and they're all on state scholarships. Before they're even allowed to do the entrance exams, they have to do an aptis test to see if they're in the ballpark. The ones who get through that then do our entrance exams, which are written by and administered by Cambridge Assessment. That's in maths and critical thinking, 2 papers. They also have to get a minimum IELTS 6, although We're far above that now. Our mean entrance this year was 6.8 when they start the foundation course. So we'd like to push for, well, for this really, for it to be discussed. And I think I'll leave it there. Let's see.
Thank you, Laurence. We're all back in the room. Yes, just in answer to Laurence's last point there, it sort of happens between some universities here in the UK, but it's not sort of an official thing. And I know Laurence and I have talked about this before, and it would be nice if something like that could happen. Right now, it's coming up to the individual universities. I see Amanda's put something in the chat there about Dundee University accepts pre-sessional results from BALEAP accredited centres. So it does happen in some institutions. Thanks for that, Amanda. Okay. But Laurence is sort of talking about something, a wider possibility. Laurence, there's also another question there from Tijen. Hi, Tijen.
Hello.
Hello. Please ask your question of Laurence, if you don't mind, Tijen.
Yeah, please go ahead.
And feel free, ask your question.
Okay. I was wondering, hi Laurence.
Hi.
We have a very similar setting here in Ankara, Turkey, Bilkent, very similar to our program, our in-sessionals. I was wondering, teachers' teaching load, how many hours per week they do teach, and your class sizes, because you were mentioning about one-on-one tutorials with students, 30 minutes each every week. I was really wondering the sizes.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so the class size is maximum 16. It's often lower than that, but that's the maximum. And the teaching load, well, when we were accredited, it was different to now. So normally it used to be 10 contact hours in semester 1 and 9 in semester 2, plus the tutorials. Now it's different because they're not the same contact hours. So now the teaching fellows have to spend time giving the feedback, writing it, it has to be detailed. They just do 3 hours on Zoom now, but they do their tutorials on Zoom as well, and they're longer. So if you've got 16 in the class, you're doing 8 hours of Zoom tutorials and 3 hours of Zoom classes.
Thank you, Laurence. Really sounds manageable in your context. I was just comparing it to ours, and we're finding it very difficult with 15 contact hours plus tutorials and 22 in each class. Teachers are finding it quite difficult. We do manage, but yours sounds much more efficient, I guess. Thank you for answering my question.
Thank you, Tijen. There were some interesting comments by Carol in the chat as well. Just the fact that different pre-sessionals do different types of assessment. And of course, that she's mentioning that the University of Glasgow have different tier 4 requirements too. So that sometimes is where the difficulties lie. There was a question from Jenny. How frequently are BALEAP assessors recruited? We have about 21, 22 assessors. We do go through periods where people decide, they're working on their doctorate, for example, and so they drop out, and then we do recruit. So we're probably coming up for a recruitment period in the near future, but that is put out as well to the wider JISC mail. So it is made available. And we're also looking towards working so very closely with Paul. I think Paul's here as well, Paul Hendry, and the TEEP scheme, that people who are involved in the TEEP assessments might go down the route of assessments for the BAS scheme. Something I could probably mention here as well is we are actually working on new criteria. So for the future, more about this later, but we are working on currently looking at new criteria, bearing in mind the sort of international context, like Laurence has just described, or Tijen has mentioned. It's very different to perhaps what we're so used to here in the UK. So we're working on that. Maggie and Melinda and Michael and Olwen, a number of people here in this room have been working very hard at looking at refining these criteria. And I can probably mention this now, that on the 21st of May, Friday the 21st of May, if you are interested in accreditation, particularly for next year, the criteria are going to change. And there's going to be a greater emphasis on describing your particular context, bearing in mind exactly what Laurence has described and what Tijen has mentioned as well. And in fact, in China, where we've had an accreditation as well. Keep that date in mind. Friday the 21st, we will be advertising it and will be going out as well. So I think there might be a couple of other questions if we have a little bit more time here. I sort of made the process easier. So Shahina mentions here, in hindsight, what would have made the process easier? Mock run-up. For the scheme, what we do as well, the accreditation visit, is you can, you can have a conversation with me if you're interested. I'm have had a number of meetings with interested parties, and they've been quite lengthy meetings, but you can also request a pre-accreditation visit, which helps. In fact, Julie, that Laurence mentioned, she came over to Goldsmiths, spent a day with us before our formal accreditation visit. And that's quite helpful in pointing you in the right direction if there are things that perhaps are, that you do need to address before the proper accreditation visit. I think for the new scheme where we are getting people to describe their context as part of the application process as well, it might flag up things with us and we can advise as well. So, that might be quite useful as well. So any other questions here? Shahina, did you want to ask that question, the last one you put in there?
Sorry, I've become a bit of a keyboard warrior.
That's all right.
Wondering whether there was an opportunity to shadow an inspection, somebody who's going under the BALEAP, to follow an inspector, because I think before you commit, it's useful to see what's involved and how the whole process from beginning to end flows.
What it involves. Yeah. That's quite an interesting one. I mean, when we train up assessors, we do actually have them shadowing. There's a whole scheme in place to do that, but we haven't really thought about potential people who want to, become assessors. That's maybe something we can think about. But of course, there are costs involved in that, and it depends on your institution letting you go. It depends on whether the institution being visited, whether or not they're happy to have somebody else, tagging along as well. So there are different considerations, but definitely an interesting idea.
Or even a video journal.
It can be quite hard on the centre itself, because it is, there's a lot going on in terms of an accreditation visit. And I think people are nervous. I mean, we call it an accreditation visit, and in many ways it feels like an inspection. And so you are nervous, and we don't want to place too much, pressure and stress on that particular institution. Any other questions?
Can I just respond to the question to Steve about the benefits of BALEAP accreditation?
Please do.
One discussion that we had whilst we were doing the British Council accreditation at University of the Arts for the pre-sessional was, what would happen if the British Council went, no, that's rubbish, we're not going to pass you? And the answer was in some ways nothing, because we still had our market. I mean, obviously it's not good if somebody tells you your accreditation is not good, your course is not good. But I think because we already had the market of students coming in, we weren't using that British Council accreditation aspect. When students are looking for a general language course, they might look on a British Council website to see who is British Council accredited. Whereas students perhaps coming for more of an EAP focus, whether that be pre-sessional, they've already got the offer for the university, or they're already within the university and hence sort of, I think, Helen's decision to go forward with the in-sessional and the language development side of it as well. I think it's the focus of BALEAP, that it's EAP focused, and also has that greater understanding of what it's like to be within a university, and that some things can be done and some things can't.
Yeah, just to agree really with Helen, but I think this whole session has been about the benefits of accreditation, and for me it really is about quality. It's genuine, not just quality assurance, but quality development. And obviously with the British Council you have access to their marketing channels, but that's an entirely different thing. And yeah, as I was saying in my bit, I really wanted that focus on quality and some frameworks, and the housekeeping, as Helen was saying. I think going through that cycle of visits is really, really useful each time, but also access to the community. I think the BALEAP community is incredibly valuable for university language centres.
Can I just make a quick comment about that, Conrad? Just to say thank you very much to both Helens for those responses, and I can see that obviously it seems. I'm not saying this is a bad thing at all, because I'm very much in favour of anything that facilitates performance enhancement and opportunities to engage with the wider community, and I can see all of those benefits. From my perspective and from the perspective of our English language unit, I can see how we could benefit from it. What I find might be trickier is convincing the university, the wider university, that it would be of benefit to the university as a whole. Because, as you know, obviously if we say to them, oh well, if we get British Council accreditation, we can get access to all of this market stuff, they're interested because there's, you know, commercial potential. And I'm just thinking of ways in which I might be able to convince those who actually are the big decision makers in the university that it's in the university's interest for us to get BALEAP accreditation. And you know, while I'm totally in favour of all of the benefits, and I can totally understand all of the benefits that you're suggesting to me, I'm not sure that those people who are the actual decision makers about these things in my workplace would be necessarily convinced by that.
Steve, maybe a good idea to talk to Helen and
yeah, definitely
about that.
Okay.
If they don't mind, because I think what's interesting, Helen, you know, is fairly high up in the university at UAL, and it's interesting that has happened at UAL. So
maybe I'm being maybe I'm being unfair. Maybe I'm really just far too cynical in my age. I don't know. But
I think it is the focus on EAP, on our context, rather than the sort of broader language learning provision that is the British Council's focus, and their sort of broader look at the whole student journey. This is really going much deeper into EAP, and I think any university that's interested in closing awarding gaps, for example, because I think most universities have awarding gaps for international students compared with home students, they would be interested in that.
Yeah, okay.
I think BALEAP can do a lot more in relation to that than British Council accreditation. But it's a quality mark. BALEAP is much cheaper than British Council. That's another.
Well, that's an incentive in itself.
Yeah. I have to put up our prices there. I'm aware of time, so I just want to say as well that so I'm not going to be here forever. I'm actually no longer going to be the chair of the accreditation scheme. I'm in the process of handing over to Leah. Leah, are you here? I can't see if you're here.
I am. I don't know whether you can hear me.
Yes, we can. Hello, Leah. There you are. Lovely. So welcome to Leah, who will be taking over. I'm sure Leah will be most happy to answer questions in the future as well. Leah's been an assessor for a while. Yes, Leah?
Yes, and I'm actually feeling quite privileged to be following in your footsteps.
Oh, hardly.
Such a strong foundation for the scheme.
Yeah, so Leah will be taking over, and as I said, questions can be directed at her as well. Look, folks, thank you very much for all your time. If you have any further questions, I'll drop my email in the chat as well. Feel free to email me or call me, because I'm still here for a little bit longer. And thanks to the speakers who came and shared their stories, Helen, and Laurence. Thank you so much, indeed. So have a lovely rest of the conference, folks. And thank you.
Conrad, has the chat been saved?
Yes, I believe it has.
Okay, thanks.
So that's good.
Yeah.
Thank you, folks.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you, Conrad. Have a good day.
Well, everybody, take care. Thank
Bye-bye.
you.